A billionaire takes her daughter to blind date, then sees a single dad and does the unbelievable. Golden light poured from the chandeliers of La Belleza, casting soft reflections on crystal glasses and polished silverware. The restaurant buzzed with quiet elegance, subtle nods, gentle laughter, and perfectly measured conversations. It was a place where power dined in silence. Chloe Langston entered like she belonged to the building, and in many ways, she did. At 34, she was a billionaire real estate mogul, sharp as glass, composed like marble. Her platinum blonde hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, framing a face sculpted by both nature and discipline. Every movement she made was precise, deliberate. Clinging to her hand was her 5-year-old daughter, Aubrey, dressed in a soft, blush-pink dress, with lace trim and tiny ballet flats. The little girl walked half a step behind her mother. Her grip was tight, and her wide eyes scanned the opulence nervously. "Is this where the princes eat, Mommy?" she whispered. Chloe smiled faintly. "No, darling. This is where people with real power eat." Tonight wasn't just another business dinner. It was a carefully planned blind date, arranged by Chloe's assistant, with a potential partner Chloe had never met. On paper, he was perfect. Ivy League, hedge fund background, no baggage. Logical, predictable, efficient. She had brought Aubrey to quietly observe, to teach her, someday, how to choose a man not for charm but for character, for power, for compatibility. They were seated near the window, a corner with privacy, white linen napkins folded like origami. Chloe crossed her legs and checked her phone. The man was late. Aubrey sat beside her on a shorter chair, legs swinging. She was quiet, watching the bubbles in her water glass, until something across the room caught her eye. In a corner table, tucked behind a potted palm, sat a man in a simple blue plaid shirt, sleeves rolled. His hair was slightly messy, his jaw unshaven, but his hands moved with care. He was cutting pizza into neat squares for the little girl sitting across from him. She wore a pink dress, almost identical to Aubrey's, and was laughing, loud, joyful, unrestrained. The man grinned. "You sure you can handle that big slice?" "It's not that big," the girl squealed. "It's bigger than your face," he said, gently wiping tomato sauce from her cheek. Aubrey leaned forward, eyes wide. She didn't say a word, but something about the table, about the warmth between them, held her completely still. Chloe followed her gaze, then frowned. "Aubrey, do not stare." The little girl turned to her mother, her voice soft. "Mommy, can we sit with them?" Chloe blinked. "What?" "The girl's wearing the same dress as me," Aubrey explained simply. "She looks happy." Chloe sat back, caught off guard. That table was clearly not from this world. The man, whoever he was, looked like he belonged in a diner, not here. Yet, he wasn't out of place with his daughter. In fact, he looked entirely at home, focused only on her smile. Her date still hadn't shown, and the sparkle in Aubrey's eyes reminded her of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Chloe exhaled. Then, to her own surprise, she stood. "Come," she said quietly. They walked across the restaurant. The man looked up as they approached, startled. He recognized Chloe instantly. Her face was on half the magazines in the country. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, smooth and calm. "My daughter noticed your daughter. Would you mind if we joined you for a few minutes?" The man, Noah Reed, stood up so quickly he almost knocked over his glass. No, I mean, yes, please, go ahead." He wiped his hands on a cloth napkin and hurried to pull out the extra chair. A few breadcrumbs clung to his fingers. Chloe noticed, but said nothing. She sat down, nodding politely. Aubrey slid onto the bench beside the other girl, already smiling. And for the first time in years, Chloe Langston did something completely unplanned. She followed her daughter's heart instead of her own rules. The table, though modest, quickly filled with laughter. Aubrey and Maisie sat side by side now, their two pink dresses brushing together like petals from the same flower. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation, only the simple and swift connection of children who recognize something kindred in each other. "Your dress has sparkles," Maisie said, admiring the tiny sequins on Aubrey's sleeves. "So does yours," Aubrey giggled. "But yours is pinker." They shared slices of pizza as if they had known each other for years. Noah slid a small plate toward Aubrey, without saying a word, offering the piece with the least sauce, as Maisie whispered, "That's the one I always pick for Daddy when he's tired." Chloe watched them, arms folded, unsure if she felt disarmed or out of place. "They met 5 minutes ago," she murmured, half to herself. Noah gave a faint smile. "Kids don't waste time deciding who's worth their heart." Aubrey leaned closer to Maisie. "Does your dad cook?" Maisie made a face. "He tries. His scrambled eggs are always too runny. But he says that's intentional." Aubrey laughed. "My mom hires people to cook, but I don't like them. They never talk to me." Chloe's posture stiffened. She wasn't used to being discussed in such casual honesty. She looked at Noah again. His attention hadn't wavered from the girls, not even for a second. Every glance, every tilt of his head toward Maisie, was filled with quiet awareness. He listened with full presence, smiled slowly, not to impress, but to encourage. A waiter passed by, pausing briefly. His eyes trailed across the table and narrowed. A nearby couple, dressed in tailored evening wear, leaned toward each other. "Is this a charity dinner?" the woman whispered, loud enough for her table and the next. "I didn't know La Belleza did public outreach now." Chloe heard it. So did Noah. But before either adult could speak, Maisie stood, tiny fists balled at her sides, chin lifted, voice sharp with the fierce loyalty of a child defending the person she loved most. "My dad is not a charity case," she said. "He's my hero." The restaurant fell quiet for a beat too long. Maisie's cheeks flushed as she sat back down quickly, her eyes still burning. Aubrey reached out and squeezed her hand. "My daddy's in heaven," Aubrey said softly. "But if I could pick a new one, I'd pick yours." Noah blinked. His lips parted as if to respond, but no words came. Then, slowly, he reached out and laid a gentle hand on Maisie's shoulder. "It's okay," he whispered. Just 2 words. His tone was warm, grounded, sure. The storm in the little girl's eyes calmed. Her shoulders softened. She leaned her cheek into his hand for just a second before returning to her pizza. Chloe had seen many negotiations, many calculated power moves, many crafted moments of persuasion, but she had never seen a man settle a child's heart with nothing more than presence. She looked again at Noah. Really looked. There were fine lines around his eyes, a small scar at the bridge of his nose. His shirt was clean but old. His shoes were scuffed, yet his hands moved with care, and his words, though few, were chosen with intention. She was used to sharp minds and sharper suits. She was not used to quiet steadiness, not used to kindness without agenda, not used to her daughter laughing without her prompting it. Maisie broke the silence by pointing to the nearly empty plate. "Best pizza ever, even if Daddy forgot the basil again." "I didn't forget," Noah muttered, mock defensive. "I strategically omitted it." Aubrey giggled. Chloe, watching her daughter's smile bloom into something freer than she had seen in months, felt something unfamiliar press behind her ribs. She did not know what to name it yet, but it felt a lot like warmth. The laughter at the table was soft and steady, like a melody only children knew how to compose. Aubrey and Maisie were already planning a pretend bakery business with invisible cakes and imaginary customers. Noah chuckled at their creativity while refilling their glasses with water. Chloe, meanwhile, checked her phone under the table, an instinct she had trained into muscle memory. One message glowed on the screen. Flagged, urgent, code red. Emergency board meeting. Possible leak. Internal betrayal suspected. Details unfolding. Claire. Her eyes froze. She blinked once, then twice, as the room seemed to tilt slightly on its axis. Her breath caught in her chest. She gripped the edge of the table. "Chloe?" Noah's voice was calm, but he noticed her pupils dilate, the pale color washing over her cheeks, her jaw clenched. I just need a second," she murmured. But her voice was distant, hollow. She reached for her phone again, but her fingers trembled. Her heartbeat raced, fast, then uneven. A prickling coldness crept through her hands. The walls felt like they were closing in. And then, without a sound, Chloe's body tilted sideways. Noah saw it a split second before it happened. He stood, arms out, and caught her just as she slumped from her chair. The entire room froze. A waitress dropped a tray nearby. A fork clattered to the floor. Several guests turned in shock. But Noah didn't hesitate. "Maisie, stay with the girls," he said calmly, lowering Chloe gently into the padded bench. He grabbed the water pitcher and poured half a glass. Then he reached for a sugar packet left from their coffee and stirred it in with practiced speed. "Can I get help over here?" a waiter stammered. But Noah didn't even look up. He placed his fingers on Chloe's wrist, counting quietly, eyes on his watch. Her pulse was rapid but shallow. He brought the sweetened water to her lips and tilted it gently. "Chloe, you're safe. You need to drink. Just a little." She stirred, her eyelids fluttering. A faint groan escaped her lips. "Breathe in slowly through your nose, out through your mouth." "Good," Noah said softly, his voice low, steady, grounding. Aubrey stood nearby, eyes wide with fear, clutching the edge of the table. "Mommy," she whispered. Noah looked up. "She's going to be okay, sweetheart. I promise." Chloe opened her eyes then, blurry, unfocused. She registered the hand supporting her head, the unfamiliar voice, the warmth of the glass against her lips, the strange steadiness in the chaos. Her eyes met Noah's. What happened?" "You fainted," he said gently, still holding her upright. "Blood sugar crash. Possibly stress-induced." Chloe blinked again, disoriented, and looked around. Guests were staring. Waitstaff lingered awkwardly. She moved to sit up straighter, brushing her hair behind her ear. She looked down to see her daughter's small face, frozen with fear. Noah helped her adjust. He didn't ask questions. He didn't offer apologies. He simply said, "Your daughter is watching. You need to stand, not for them, for her." The words cut deeper than she expected. Chloe placed a hand over her heart, still hammering. She nodded slowly. With Noah's support, she rose to her feet. He stepped back without a word, giving her space. Aubrey rushed into her arms. "I thought you were leaving like Daddy," the little girl cried into her shoulder. "No, baby," Chloe whispered, her voice shaking. "I'm right here." Chloe turned back toward Noah. He was calmly wiping his hands with a napkin, his face unreadable, but his eyes soft. "You knew what to do," she said quietly. He shrugged once. "Used to be a trauma medic. Long time ago." She stared at him, at the man in the worn shirt, with hands calloused from tools, not luxury, and suddenly, nothing about him looked small. "I didn't even thank you." "You do not have to," he said, nodding toward Aubrey, now tucked into Chloe's side. She already did. The buzz of the restaurant slowly returned, but something in Chloe had changed. For the first time in a very long time, she had not been the one in control, and the world had not ended. In fact, someone had caught her, not with power, not with money, just with care. The private room was quiet, dimly lit, insulated from the curious eyes and murmurs outside. A velvet couch sat near the window, and the flicker of a candle on the corner table cast shadows that softened the sharp edges of the world. Chloe sat still, her posture no longer rigid, no longer CEO-like. Her hand moved slowly to her hair, fingers undoing the gold clip that held it in place. For the first time in years, the platinum waves fell around her shoulders, soft, unguarded. She looked like someone who had been running for too long and had finally stopped. Aubrey sat beside her, silent at first. But the tears had been waiting. They came in a sudden, trembling wave. "Mommy," she whispered, voice cracking. "Are you going to disappear too? Like Daddy?" The question struck Chloe like a physical blow. Her breath hitched. Before she could form a response, Noah was already kneeling in front of them. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't say anything at all. He gently lifted Aubrey into his arms, holding her close against his chest, his hand cradling the back of her head. She was stiff at first, but his voice broke through the fear. "Breathe with me, sweetheart. Can you do that?" She nodded through tears. "In through your nose, slow, just like that. Now out through your mouth. One more." Noah's tone was low and even, each word deliberate. He held her with the steadiness of someone who had seen chaos and learned to bring calm. "Feel my shirt?" he said gently. "What's it made of?" Aubrey sniffled. "Cotton." "Good. What color is it?" "Blue." "Now squeeze my hand." "You feel that?" She gave the slightest squeeze. "Perfect," he whispered. "You're here. I'm here. And your mommy is right there. You are safe." Within 2 minutes, her breathing had evened out. The shaking stopped. Her small body melted into his, head resting against his shoulder like she had always belonged there. Chloe watched the whole scene, her hand over her mouth. Something inside her cracked, quietly, painfully. Noah met her gaze but didn't say anything. Tears streamed down Chloe's face before she realized they had even begun. Not performative tears, not tears of frustration or pressure, just tears of helplessness, of awe, of recognition. She turned away, wiping her eyes with the back of her wrist, then laughed bitterly under her breath. "I employ a team of therapists, psychologists, nutritionists. I've read every parenting book written by anyone with a PhD." Noah didn't move, still holding Aubrey, who had now drifted into a quiet daze. "I've never seen her calm down like that," Chloe added, voice hoarse. "Not even with professionals." He sat beside her slowly, keeping Aubrey on his lap. "It's not always about fixing. Sometimes it's about being still enough for them to land." Chloe looked down at her daughter, this small, fragile person she had tried so hard to protect with money, with planning, with endless preparation. "What are you?" she asked quietly. "Some kind of child whisperer?" Noah let out a soft breath. "I used to be a battlefield medic. Later, trauma response. Mostly combat zones. My job was to keep people breathing long enough to get home." Chloe's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected that. He continued, voice steady but distant. "Years ago, my wife had emergency surgery while I was deployed. Her surgeon called me mid-procedure for input. I gave it. I thought I was helping." He paused, his jaw clenched for a moment. "She didn't make it." Chloe turned toward him fully. "It wasn't your fault," she said, instinctively. "I was her husband. I should have been there, not dialing in from half a world away. After that, I stopped saving anyone except my daughter." Chloe looked at his hands, calloused, steady, capable. "I've built a life where my child has the best of everything," she said slowly. "But what she really needs is exactly what you just did." She looked up at him, eyes red, voice almost a whisper. "She needs your hands. Not your resume, just your hands." The morning after the incident at La Belleza, headlines were merciless. Billionaire CEO collapses mid-dinner? Concerns over leadership stability. Chloe Langston faints in public corporate overload? A short, grainy video had already gone viral. Chloe, slumped in her chair, Noah catching her before she hit the ground. No context, no explanation. Just weakness on full display. By noon, Langston Enterprises stock had dropped nearly 4%. Claire, her assistant, called in panic. "The board is meeting in 2 hours. Emergency session. Sterling's making moves. He's using the video to push for a leadership vote." Chloe stood frozen in her home office, phone pressed to her ear, pulse racing again. Then, a knock. Noah stood at the door, in the same flannel shirt from last night. his sleeves rolled up, 2 coffees in hand. He stepped inside and quietly placed a mug on her desk. "I saw the video," he said simply. Chloe looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hair tied back messily. Not the composed CEO the public knew. Noah studied her. Who had access to the footage? "Just Claire and the restaurant's private feed," she replied slowly. Noah's voice lowered. "Claire came from Sterling's office, didn't she?" Chloe's eyes flickered. "Yes. 2 months ago." He nodded. "This wasn't a mistake. It was planned. That video hit the internet 2 minutes after your collapse. No random person could have leaked it that fast. Sterling needed emotional leverage. He manufactured it." Chloe sat down, her hands trembling around the mug. "Why would he go this far?" "Because you're in his way," Noah answered. "And fear is persuasive. He's banking on that." He pulled out his phone and began typing. "This is not a moment to hide," he continued. "You do not downplay this. You own it." "Own fainting in a restaurant," she said bitterly. "You're not a CEO who fainted. You're a mother. A woman pushed to her edge, still standing. You show them that." Her voice softened. "You think that will work?" "I do," Noah replied. "People don't trust perfection. They connect to strength with scars." Chloe looked down at the coffee, steam curling from the surface. She could not remember the last time someone simply brought her a cup without needing anything. "You speak like you've seen this before," she said. "I have. In war zones. Different kind of battlefield, same tactics. You find the one profiting from chaos." She took a breath, shaky but steadier than before. "You really think this can be reframed?" "Absolutely," he said. "This is not about defeat, it's about resilience." She stood slowly, her knees faltering. Years of holding it all in weighed heavy on her spine. Noah moved instinctively, placing his hand between her shoulders. Not to guide her, not to fix her, just to steady her. She didn't pull away. "I've spent my life being bulletproof," she murmured. "Armor's heavy," he replied, "especially when it hides the parts that still need healing." Chloe looked up at him, this man in flannel, with calloused hands and soft eyes. For once, she didn't feel the need to defend herself. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He paused. "Because your daughter needs you to stay standing, and because I know what it's like to fall with no one there to catch you." Chloe closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. For the first time, she didn't reach for a lawyer or PR team. She nodded. "Okay, let's fight it your way." And just like that, she realized, maybe she didn't have to fight alone. The Langston estate was the kind of place people whispered about, sweeping marble floors, vaulted ceilings, and rooms that echoed even in silence. It was beautiful, yes, but cold in its perfection, like a museum no one was allowed to touch. That changed the moment Maisie stepped through the front door, hand in hand with Aubrey. "Whoa," Maisie gasped, eyes wide at the grand staircase and chandelier overhead. "Is this a hotel?" "No," Aubrey giggled, pulling her along. "It's just Mommy's house." They took off together, laughter echoing down the polished halls like music the walls hadn't heard in years. Chloe watched them disappear, a strange tightness in her chest she couldn't explain. She turned to see Noah standing just inside the doorway, holding his jacket awkwardly. "You sure this isn't too much?" he asked. She gave a small smile. "Honestly, it's too quiet without them." Noah followed the sound of the girls and peeked into the kitchen. A chef in a crisp uniform was prepping dinner with clinical precision, but something was missing. Without hesitation, Noah rolled up his sleeves and walked over. "Mind if I help?" he asked. The chef looked startled, then stepped aside without protest. Within minutes, Noah was slicing vegetables with practiced ease, stirring soup on the stove, and adding a pinch more time than the recipe called for. "Needs warmth," he murmured, tasting the broth. Then he turned and began making hot cocoa from scratch, milk, Dark chocolate, a dash of cinnamon. No measurements, just instinct. He worked with bare hands, no watch on his wrist, no rings or cufflinks, just the quiet confidence of someone who made things better, one small act at a time. Chloe stood at the kitchen doorway, watching. She wasn't used to anyone stepping into her world and changing its rhythm, but somehow Noah's presence didn't disturb it. He softened it. Her fingers brushed the silver chain around her neck, the one she rarely took off. It held a simple locket, inside, a picture of Aubrey as a baby and one of her late husband. It was her armor, her anchor. And right now, she held it like a lifeline. The girls came skidding back into the room, cheeks flushed from running. "It smells amazing," Maisie exclaimed. "Are we eating soup or cake?" Aubrey asked, peering over the counter. "Both," Noah said, handing them tiny mugs of cocoa. "But only if you promise not to spill on the fancy chairs," the girls gasped. "We'll sit on the floor." Dinner was simple: soup, crusty bread, and roasted vegetables. But it was the warmest meal Chloe had eaten in years. They sat around the long dining table, though the girls quickly abandoned their seats and made a fort under the tablecloth, whispering and giggling between spoonfuls. Chloe watched them, smiling without realizing it. Noah caught her expression and leaned in slightly. "You okay?" She nodded. "I haven't seen her this happy in a long time." "She's a good kid," he said. "She just needed someone to laugh with." Chloe looked at him. "And what about me?" Noah paused, then smiled gently. "You're doing better than you think." Later, as the girls curled up in the oversized couch with blankets and stuffed animals, Chloe and Noah lingered near the kitchen, their voices low. "I've never invited anyone into this house before," she admitted. He raised an eyebrow. "Really? Not like this?" she said. "Not someone who didn't come with a title." He said nothing, but the look in his eyes was understanding, not judgment. Aubrey's voice floated from the couch, drowsy but clear. "Mommy?" "Yes, baby." Aubrey yawned, eyes half closed. "I like the house better when Mr. Noah's here." Chloe felt something shift deep in her chest, a gentle breaking, a quiet truth. She looked at Noah, her voice barely above a whisper. "So do I." The boardroom of Langston Enterprises buzzed with a tense undercurrent. Executives sat in stiff-backed leather chairs, murmuring behind digital tablets and polished portfolios. At the head stood Vice Chairman Martin Sterling, impeccably dressed, his voice razor-sharp. Behind him, a large screen flickered on. The video was short and cruel. Chloe Langston slumped in her chair at La Belleza, caught mid-fall by a stranger. No audio, no context, just a caption flashing across the bottom. "Is this the woman we trust with billions?" Sterling's voice rang out. "This footage raises serious concerns. For the sake of stability, I recommend invoking the emergency transition clause to replace Miss Langston." Whispers swept the room. Some nodded, some fidgeted. Chloe sat motionless at the far end of the table, her face unreadable, her fingers digging into the chair's arms. Years of building her empire, threatened by a 30-second smear. Then the doors opened. Noah Reed stepped inside. Simple button-down, slacks, steady stride. He looked out of place, but perfectly grounded. Sterling frowned. "Who is this?" Chloe turned. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the knot in her chest loosened. Noah walked forward and plugged in a flash drive. Another screen lit up. "I'm here to provide context," he said calmly. "What you saw was only half the story." The first slide showed an email time-stamped minutes before the video went public, sent from Chloe's assistant to a PR firm connected to Sterling. Her collapse was due to acute hypoglycemia triggered by stress, Noah said. Not incompetence. A predictable, even preventable, medical response. The next slide showed security footage of Claire, her assistant, filming Chloe instead of helping her. Then came a contract, signed quietly by Sterling, authorizing a crisis management firm to exploit a Moment of executive vulnerability. The room fell silent. Sterling shot up. This is hearsay. Invasive and unverified. Noah didn't flinch. What's truly invasive is ambition that sacrifices a child's sense of safety and a mother's dignity for corporate gain. He turned to the board. You are not judging a single moment. You are judging a calculated act of sabotage. Chloe Langston didn't fail. She was pushed, and she still stood back up. Silence stretched across the room. Then folders began closing. Heads nodded. A few members whispered. The motion to remove Chloe was struck down. A second motion, to remove Sterling for unethical conduct, passed immediately. Security was called. Sterling paused at the door, throwing Chloe one last venomous look before disappearing down the hall. The room emptied. Chloe stayed in her chair, her eyes locked on Noah. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. I know, he replied. She rose, slow and deliberate, the weight of days pressing down. They all saw me fall, she whispered. And today, Noah said, they saw you rise. Her eyes shimmered, soft with unshed tears. They saw a CEO get back up, but you're the only one who saw the mother in me fall. Then, without title or pretense, Chloe stepped forward and took his hand, not as a leader, not as a billionaire, just a woman, finally seen. A week had passed since the boardroom battle, but something in the air at the Langston estate had shifted entirely. The walls no longer echoed with silence. Instead, laughter filled the halls like sunlight through tall windows. It was a Saturday morning. Warm light streamed into the kitchen, where Noah stood barefoot, flipping pancakes on the stove. The smell of vanilla and butter floated through the air. He wore a soft gray t-shirt and plaid pajama pants, his hair tousled from sleep. At the kitchen island, Maisie sat next to Aubrey, both girls still in their pajamas, pink, of course. They were giggling about something only 5-year-olds could understand, leaning close like sisters. Across the room, Chloe shuffled in, still wrapped in her silk robe. Her platinum blonde hair was a bit messy, a single strand falling over her brow, but her smile was brighter than the morning sun. You are way too cheerful for someone cooking at 7 a.m., she teased, pouring herself coffee. Noah glanced over his shoulder. Blame your daughter. She woke us up asking if pancakes could be heart-shaped. And? She asked. He flipped one perfectly onto a plate. They can. Chloe smiled softly, her eyes drifting to the two little girls whispering like co-conspirators. There was something beautifully chaotic about it all. The uncombed hair, the sticky fingers, the unplanned moments. I never thought my house would feel like a home, she said quietly. Noah looked at her for a beat. Neither did I. The rest of the morning passed in slow, golden joy. Noah handed out breakfast like he'd lived there for years, and Chloe didn't question it. She just let herself exist, without the pressure, without the armor. Later that day, as the sun began to lower toward the horizon, Chloe stepped out onto the terrace. The sky was painted in hues of amber and soft lavender. She stood at the railing, barefoot now, her robe replaced by a simple cream dress that fluttered in the breeze. Noah joined her quietly, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the skyline. Below them, Maisie and Aubrey raced across the lawn, their matching pink dresses catching the wind. They were spinning, shrieking with delight, the way only children without wounds or worries could. Chloe turned to Noah, her voice low but clear. You do not have to be the doctor who fixes the world. He looked at her, surprised by her tenderness. She reached for his hand and held it tightly. You just have to be the man who loves this little family. Noah's throat tightened, but he nodded, brushing his thumb gently over her knuckles. And you, he said softly, don't have to buy love anymore. You already have it. She let out a small laugh, half joy, half relief, and leaned her head against his shoulder. They stood in silence, watching the girls run. Maisie grabbed Aubrey's hand as they twirled in